The film begins by showing a haunted pond. The water in the pond is black, and it is located in a remote area called Black Water. Next, we see a family of three: Grace, her husband, and her younger sister. They were on vacation, heading to a crocodile park. They arrived there quite early. Many tourists can be seen feeding the crocodiles. Everyone was enjoying the view, and they too had fun in the park. At night, they stayed at a hotel and discussed their plans for the next day. They decided to go to a nearby pond called Black Water to go fishing. This is the same pond we saw at the beginning. The next day, they arrived there. The pond is huge and stretches far into the distance. It is surrounded by trees, making it look like a forest. They meet a man there who owns a boat. He is the caretaker of the area. After a while, he takes them fishing. The caretaker says that his boss is nearby, taking another family on a tour. He also had a gun, which could be useful in case of danger, because there are many crocodiles around. Meanwhile, during a conversation between Grace and her sister, we learn that Grace is pregnant. She hasn't told her husband yet because she is waiting for the right time. They sat in the boat, enjoying the beauty of nature. Everything felt very peaceful. Slowly, they traveled far into the water. At one point, they tried fishing, but couldn't catch any fish, so the caretaker took them deeper into the pond. This time, Grace's husband tried fishing. Suddenly, something got caught, and everyone was excited. But then, the boat shook violently and overturned. They all fell into the water. In reality, it wasn't a fish. A crocodile had attacked their boat. Grace's husband shouted in fear, "Climb the tree, quickly!" Grace couldn't find her sister and started looking for her. Meanwhile, a crocodile was dragging the caretaker away. That meant he wasn't alive anymore. Grace was terrified because the crocodile was now coming toward her husband, but he somehow managed to climb up to safety. Grace's sister, Lee, was hiding under the overturned boat. She slowly came out and saw the crocodile approaching her. Seeing this, Grace shouted, "Get on the boat, quickly!" Lee climbed onto the boat, but the crocodile kept shaking it violently, as if trying to throw her off. Lee was terrified, but she held onto the boat tightly and didn't fall. Grace's husband started making noise in the water to draw the crocodile's attention toward him so that Lee could escape. Eventually, the crocodile dragged the caretaker's body away, and the surroundings became quiet again. At that moment, Grace said to her husband, "This is the right time to get Lee out of there." She told Lee, "Throw the rope tied to the boat toward us." Lee threw the rope, and Grace's husband started pulling her. The boat was stuck there, and it was so heavy that even after trying together, they couldn't move it. Grace encouraged Lee to come forward, but Lee was scared and refused at first. Later, she gathered courage, got into the water, and managed to climb the tree, but her leg was injured from the crocodile's earlier attack. Now they were thinking about how to escape. Grace said, "Let's wait. Maybe the caretaker's boss will come looking for him and find us." They waited on the tree for a long time, but no one came, and the crocodile remained there, returning again and again as if waiting for them to come down and become its food. At this time, Grace's husband said, "Why don't we get into the water, fix the boat, and sit on it?" Grace and Lee hesitated because the plan was dangerous. They knew the moment they entered the water, the crocodile would attack. Out of fear, Lee started screaming, "Help! Help!" Grace also shouted, but the place was so isolated that no one could hear them. Their problems didn't end there. There were many mosquitoes around, and they were getting bitten constantly. They only had one mobile phone, but it had fallen into the water and was ruined. Then Grace came up with a plan. "There are many trees here. If we move from one tree to another, maybe we can make it across. But first, we have to see where the trees end." Grace's husband had lost his glasses in the water, so he couldn't see well, and Lee's leg was injured. So Grace decided to go ahead and check herself. She moved from one tree to another and discovered that there was an open space of about 100 meters between some trees that they would need to swim across. Crossing that distance wouldn't be safe because the crocodile could attack at any time. It swims faster than humans. Grace returned in despair. Then she saw the caretaker's severed ear floating in the water.
She was horrified at the sight. She came back and told everything. Then Grace's husband said, "There's no other way. I'll try to set the boat upright." He convinced them and went down into the water. Swimming toward the boat, he finally managed to set it upright. Seeing this, the two sisters were overjoyed. But then they noticed Grace's husband was no longer on the boat. They became terrified. Suddenly, he emerged from under the water, and everyone felt a bit relieved. But just then, they saw the crocodile heading straight toward him. Out of nowhere, it leapt at Grace's husband and dragged him underwater. Witnessing this horrific scene, they screamed and burst into tears. Moments later, the crocodile surfaced again, holding Grace's husband in its mouth. That meant the crocodile had killed him as well. Grace collapsed in grief, crying uncontrollably. Lee was left in shock. Soon after, the crocodile left the area. Lee said, "We're completely trapped here. We'll never be able to get out. That crocodile will kill us too." Grace tried to reassure her. "No, don't lose hope. We can escape using this boat." She climbed down and tried to pull the boat's rope, but it was too far away. Then she moved on to another branch to reach it. But suddenly, the crocodile lunged at Grace. Seeing this, she panicked and quickly returned to Lee. The crocodile stared at them for a moment and then went back underwater. At that time, Grace saw her husband's lifeless body floating in the water, and she broke down completely. She cried bitterly, devastated by the thought that she couldn't tell her husband that she was going to be a mother. Lee comforted her, gently stroking her head. Night fell, and the place looked even more terrifying. The weather was also bad. The crocodile was still lurking nearby. Suddenly, it started eating Grace's husband's dead body. Hearing those sounds, Grace mentally collapsed and cried again. That's how the night passed. The next morning, Grace appeared completely silent, numb from trauma. Lee encouraged her. "What's done is done. Now you have to think about your baby. Don't be sad. That child will be your husband's last memory." Grace slowly nodded. They noticed the boat had drifted far away. Now they would have to swim to reach it. They prepared to get into the water. Just then, the crocodile surfaced again, coming very close to them. They stayed completely still. Fortunately, the crocodile retreated. They started moving again. But suddenly, the crocodile bit Grace's leg and dragged her underwater. Lee panicked, crying out, "Grace!" Right then, Grace surfaced and Lee quickly pulled her back up into the tree. Grace was in terrible condition. Her leg was deeply wounded and bleeding heavily. Lee tore her own clothes to bandage Grace's leg, trying to stop the bleeding. Although the bleeding slowed a little, Grace was in excruciating pain. At that moment, Lee suddenly heard the sound of a boat. She climbed up a branch and screamed for help, but because of the engine noise, no one heard her. The boat left. Meanwhile, the crocodile was circling near Grace, drawn by the blood dripping into the water. Lee somehow returned to Grace and tied her leg more tightly to stop the bleeding. When the crocodile finally went away, Lee said, "Grace, I'm going to the boat. We must get out of here somehow." Grace tried to stop her, but with no other choice, Lee left. She carefully got into the water, swam toward the boat, and climbed onto it. She drained the water from the boat and tried to start the engine, but the sound of the engine drew the crocodile, and it climbed onto the boat trying to grab Lee. Lee panicked and jumped into the water, attempting to climb a tree. The crocodile caught her. She fell unconscious underwater. When she opened her eyes, she found herself lying on the shore next to the caretaker's corpse. She saw her finger was broken and wrapped it with cloth. Then she checked her abdomen and discovered a deep wound. At that moment, she remembered the caretaker had a gun. She began searching and found it. She cleaned the gun with water, loaded it with bullets, and tested it by firing. The gun worked perfectly. Then she broke off one of the caretaker's arms and used it to make noise in the water to lure the crocodile. Gun in hand, she stood ready, scanning her surroundings. But the crocodile didn't come. Lee stood up. Suddenly, the crocodile appeared behind her, silently sneaking up to attack. Sensing a movement, Lee turned around in fear and fell back into the water. The crocodile chased after her and soon disappeared. Lee stopped, searching for the crocodile around her. Suddenly, it surfaced and grabbed her arm. Her hand was in the crocodile's mouth, and she immediately pulled the trigger. The bullet hit the crocodile's head, killing it instantly. Her hand was freed. The crocodile's lifeless body floated on the water. Seeing this, Lee burst into tears of relief. She returned to Grace and said, "Be happy, I've killed the crocodile. Now we can get out of here." She tried to wake Grace, but couldn't. Lee broke down, crying uncontrollably. In reality, Grace had died from excessive blood loss. At last, Lee climbed onto the boat with Grace's lifeless body. She started the engine and rode off into the distance. And thus ends a tragic but true story.